Hello, my name is Rebecca Lutz, and this is my ePortfolio for my Educational Leadership degree from Fort Hays. So I will start by going over my candidate information. So it starts off with our artifacts folder. Anything that you see in my ePortfolio is also located in my artifacts folder, so you can find it in here and easily access it. The next thing that we have is our goal video. So I start off by kind of talking a little bit about myself, where I've been teaching, what I've been doing in my career, and then we go on to talk about professional and personal goals that we've made for the future, just kind of talking about where I want to go with my degree once I get it. Next is my leadership philosophy. I had a really good time making this. First off, I start by talking about just positive school culture. I want families and community members to be able to come into the building and just see the passion that's radiating off of all of us, all of the students, all of the staff. I just want everyone to have a positive experience when they come, no matter what the differences are. And as a building leader, you might have to make sure that you're intentional about your communications, not only with parents, but with stakeholders as well. I want to provide the community with opportunities to come to the school, see what we're doing, help out. I know all the kiddos love when people from the community come and just talk to them. So that's something that I want to make sure that I'm doing. My leadership style was steward. So characteristics of this are hardworking, dependable, team success. I want to make sure that everyone's successful. And then decision making is linear and logical. My goal for right now, I don't plan on leaving the classroom for a while. I want to try and take on more of a leadership role throughout the school, more involved with maybe doing more mentoring, community engagement nights, that type of thing. My inspiration, right now we got a new school principal and she always has an open door policy, so you can always go in, you can talk. Any problems you're having, whether it be something with school or something personal, she's always willing to listen to you. And I love that. I want to make sure that I have that same communication with my staff members as well. And then Aristotle had a quote that I really like. It's called, "Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all." That's something I really believe in. I always try and focus on my relationship with the students when we first start, because I feel like once that relationship is built, it's going to be a lot easier to do, anything else that you want them to do inside of the classroom. So I always like to build that relationship up before we do anything else. Next is our plan of study. So it's just all of the classes that I took in order to get my degree. Program completion timeline is a video that I made before I started on all of my ePortfolio stuff. So it's talking about, when I became an educator, also talks about when I joined like BLT, building leadership team, professional development team, anything really that has to do with my background in teaching is all included in there. Next is my resume. So I talked about skills, my experiences that I've had, education, and it's currently up to date up to Fort Hays, and then different professional organizations that I am in within the school and outside of the school as well. Next is our activities. The first one I will talk about is the annotated bibliography. I will say that this was probably the hardest part of the portfolio, just because you had to make sure that the sources that you were getting were reliable and that they were providing you with information that would be beneficial for the future. So we went through and answered different questions. Each question has 3 sources that go with it. And then for each of those sources, we did a summary, assessment, and a reflection. Most of the articles that I found when I was doing my research were very beneficial. There was a couple that I found that weren't very beneficial, but I felt like needed to be added in here as well, just kind of to give me a heads up so that I know in the future. Next is our activity log spreadsheet. So it talks about all the activities that we've done. So over here it'll have the activity name, and then it has which standard that it goes with. So I have each of the standards for secondary, district, and elementary levels. The activity component tracker was just another way for us to make sure that we were getting all of our standards met and not duplicating the standards. So throughout, you'll kind of see what I used each of them for. There's the district, the elementary, and then the secondary. So I made sure that I used all of them at least once, and then I didn't duplicate any of the components as well. Next is my district level artifacts. So in here, I talked about some of our assignments that we did in class. I also added in some personal things that I've been doing in the classroom. So one of the favorite things that I did this year was plan a community helper day. So I called all of the communities, like everyone in the community, and asked if they would come and bring their fire truck or bring their ambulance to just kind of come and talk to the kiddos. So I ended up getting a police officer, a ambulance, fire truck, and a garbage man. And so they all came, and the kiddos, all the kids at school got to kind of rotate through and get in the ambulance and hold the fire hose and all of that. So that was a really fun activity to plan. I plan on kind of keeping that and expanding on it probably in the future. Let's see what else. And then something else that I've been doing this year as a building leader, I've been mentoring. So I've been meeting with my mentee and helping her with writing IEPs, with the testing, just everything that we have to do throughout the school. It's required that we meet with them at least 40 hours. So I've been helping her, write her IEPs. We did a mock IEP. Been in her classroom and observed her teaching, and kind of have talked about that action feedback and what we can do or change in the future. Next is the elementary level. So same as the other one, I used assignments that we did throughout the class, and then also things that we've been doing throughout the school as well. So the first one, I kind of did a overview of the data that we use and how we evaluate the data inside the school building. This was a decision tree that I made of different scenarios for either the kiddos or for staff members, and just how I would go about making decisions if that was to come up in the future. The next one is ethical behavior. So it's a chart that kind of talks about the building, the district, and myself, and what decisions I'm making, and making sure that those are all ethical choices for the classroom, for the students, and for the district. This one was one of my favorite activities to do. So it's a culturally responsive instruction and behavior support practices. So I made a Canva, and it just goes over different ways, like equity. It talks about what equity is, what our goal is in the classroom. Talks about inclusive environments, just making sure that all of our kiddos are safe. This is my advanced curriculum development and instruction. So in this one, it was very beneficial because we started talking about different aspects of when we're teaching. So if we're teaching face-to-face, hybrid, virtual, or remote, it talks about benefits to those things. It talks about negatives. It also says like what students would need during that time to make sure that all of the students are getting what they need, and then also what teachers might need during that time as well. So if that ever comes up again in the future, I'll have this chart ready to go and just kind of be able to show it to the staff members of what the positives and negatives are for that stuff. Next thing was MTSS interventions. So Stacy Mayberry is a preschool interventionist specialist. She always comes and talks to us. So we always get into our groups of myself and my two paras, and we always sit down and talk and go through our data. We try and figure out what we can change in the classroom to make it better. We can talk about like different intervention strategies. Basically, it was really beneficial because it was time for me to sit and collaborate with the people that are in my room a lot of the time with me. So we were able to come up with ideas to implement, and then she would come back next testing after testing was done and see if what we were doing was beneficial or if we still need to make some tweaks to it. And then this one, I was able last school year, I'm sorry, to sit in on teacher and parent interviews. This was something that was beneficial for me to see face to face. The first interview that I sat in on, I kind of just sat back and watched the process and watched what they did. And then after that, I was able to, ask questions. And that's actually how I found one of my paras. They allowed me to go interview in the room with them. So that was beneficial for my classroom and for myself to have that experience and get to see how you would run an interview looking for teachers. Next is secondary level. So this assignment was one of my favorite ones to do as well. So it was data protocols. So you can use the canvas that I made over here to go through and make sure that you're answering all of the questions to look at your data deeper. In this assignment, I talked about free, appropriate public education. So, as a teacher, it's very crucial that, that all families are getting access to the same stuff, no matter their disability. So we want to make sure that, students with disabilities are still getting the same treatment as typically developing students as well. In this assignment, I went over the community needs. So I went through different policies that we have, not just our district, but other districts as well, and just kind of talked about things that we could change with those or, things that weren't addressed in that particular area. In this one, I did preventing special education teacher liability. So it's different ways that the school can make sure that they are making all the proper choices, warning signs of abuse for kiddos that you could see coming into your classroom, and then also ways that teachers can limit liability themselves. And then I am working on getting my verification documents. They have been sent out. And then my Eportfolio program reflection. So this was fun to do because I got to think about what I can do differently in the future. And I know I've always been a very big procrastinator. Dr. Moody even warned us. He said, this is not something to put off. Make sure you're working on it. Make sure you're working on it. And I got to a point kind of where I had this to do, plus testing, plus we have a bunch of IEPs coming up. So I got really stressed out. And I feel like it was, affecting a lot of things in my life. So I got to kind of reflect on that and what I can do differently in the future. And I, as I was working through this, I kind of thought about the fact I could make a list of everything, school, personal, everything, and just make a list all in one place. So I have it, I'm easy to cross them off and that type of thing. So that's something that I did at the end, which I should have done at the beginning, at the end of this. And, I put a list together of everything that needed to be accomplished and when I needed to accomplish it. And that really did help me a lot. And then at the bottom of this is the program reflection. So I talked about the courses that I took and when I took them. And then I also talked about activities that I did that were very beneficial to myself inside of those classes. Obviously, there was a lot more than just those, but I kind of picked the couple that stood out right away when I was looking at the courses. So there is that. And then here will be my highlight video. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.